Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. The deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. As we report to you this evening, 58 people dead, more than 500 injured. The shooter dead after opening fire on the crowd at a country music concert in Las Vegas. Now the search for a motive continues. Let's go live now with Lana Zach, who joins us with the very latest.
Good evening. We are learning some disturbing new details about the shooter and the 19 firearms that authorities found there in his hotel room at the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Resort just down here at the Las Vegas Strip. Among the things that are very chilling, we know that authorities also found several magazines preloaded with ammunition, the shooter trying to inflict as much damage as possible.
The gunfire came too quickly to count, bullets tearing into a crowd of 22,000 people who were out to just enjoy a night of music on the Vegas Strip. Country music star Jason Aldean in the middle of a set when the hail of bullets rained down.
Like some were falling and some were screaming and yelling.
People just started dropping around us. A lot of dead bodies, a lot of people were just piling on top of whoever, even if they're bleeding or not.
We ran and we ran. And I still wasn't even sure if it was actually bullets until one of the times we paused, our friend was like, the guy next to us got shot.
Police officers jumping into action.
Upstairs from Mandalay Bay, halfway up, I see the shots coming from Mandalay Bay.
Closing in on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, where authorities say the gunman, 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, was holed up. Police say he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound before SWAT teams burst into his room. The death toll rising all day.
The number of people that have died associated with this event has increased. Right now we're using the number of 58.
More than 500 injured. President Trump among those reacting to the tragedy.
We are joined together today in sadness, shock, and grief.
This is a crazed lunatic full of hate.
And we believe that those numbers of dead and injured may continue to increase in just a moment when we hear the latest from the authorities. At this point, the law enforcement still says they believe him to have been a lone wolf. There are no known ties between him and any international terrorist organization. And at this point, his motive remains an unfathomable mystery. Reporting live from Las Vegas, Lana Zach, ABC News. Back to you.
And for more on the latest on the investigation, let's go live once again to Las Vegas Sheriff Joseph Lombardo.
We will make arrangements for people that attended the stadium that believe they have personal items there to respond to the area, and we will help you retrieve your items. At this point, I want to bring Greg Castle forward from the County Fire Department, and he will give you an update on the Family Resource Center. Prior to that, I think it's important and I appreciate for you to put this out, for the people's families that are responding to the Las Vegas area. Some local proprietaries have offered up rooms for the family members at no charge, and that is the Boyd Group, Stations Casinos, the South Point with Mr. Gone, and also Siegel Suites. So one more time, the Boyd Group, Stations Casinos, the South Point with Mr. Gone, and the Siegel Suites. So individuals responding to the Las Vegas area in need of accommodations, those individual properties will accommodate you. So Greg.
Thank you, Sheriff. My name is Greg Castle, Fire Chief of the Clark County Fire Department. And as the Sheriff said, there's a couple things I want to mention. But first off is the Family Assistance Center. The Family Assistance Center is set up right now. It's a combination of police department, fire department, the coroner's office, and other local entities working together to provide the services for the families and for that are coming into town or that are still here trying to handle what has happened with their loved ones. They're providing all kinds of services. As the Sheriff said, many places have stepped up to provide flights, housing, food, transportation, and many other things. So that's a wonderful thing for our community have come forward and have done. This facility is located in the South Hall of the Convention Center, S2, and it's pretty much taken up the entire South Hall. There's also a donation drop-off area that's been set up to facilitate people wanting to drop off non-perishable goods over there at that site, water and so forth. That entrance to that is off of Sierra Vista, right just west of this Convention Center Area Command Metro building at Joe W. Brown and Sierra Vista. So I'd like to take an opportunity right now to thank the men and women of the fire departments, the Clark County Fire Department, obviously very near and dear to my heart, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Henderson Fire Department, and North Las Vegas Fire Department, as we were all teamed up there last night doing what we've trained for so many years. We wish would never happen, but we definitely had a plan in place, and we were able to execute that plan as well as we possibly could. We had 108 firefighters on scene. We have 155 unit hours just for the Clark County Fire Department alone spent last night handling that scene, teaming up with our partners from the law enforcement to reach as many people as fast as we could and to try to do as much as we could for the community. I also want to take a moment to recognize Community Ambulance. They were there as a standby medical at that scene last night. They had 5 or 6 ambulances there. They immediately threw critically wounded patients into their ambulances and transported from that scene. And also American Medical Response, AMR, and Medic West Ambulance. They brought all hands on deck. They brought in all of their employees. They rallied everything they could, from pickup trucks to vans to all their available ambulances, to bring extra medical supplies down to a staging area for us and to make those resources available to our community during that time of need. So I want to give a big shout out to those private ambulance companies that have done a wonderful thing for us last night as responders. And from the fire department side, I'll take a few questions.
Are you able to say how many ambulances?
I could not quantify that, but I have worked here for 30 years and I have never seen that many ambulances that I saw last night.
Tens, dozens, hundreds?
Dozens and dozens.
You said 108 firefighters. Is that 108 Clark County firefighters?
That's 108 firefighters combined from those resources I mentioned, those 4 fire departments.
What types of injuries were there to the people transported to the hospital? Was it mostly gunshot wounds?
There's a wide range of injuries, from gunshots to shrapnel wounds to trample injuries to people jumping fences trying to egress and getting hurt one way or another. So it was a wide range of those types of injuries.
Chief, will you explain comment or tell us what the staging process is? There are some who said it took a long time for people to finally get into the venue, or rescuers to finally get into the venue.
Well, we had multiple branches and divisions set up last night to cover that large area, and I can't speak to how long it took them to get into that venue, but we had some issues right out of the chute, or right out of the start, because things were going on. We didn't know where the gunfire was. We weren't sure it was safe to commit our people at that time, and that's some of our policies and procedures are to try and make our people as safe as possible. We know they're going to go into a dangerous situation. That's why we do it in a format called a rescue task force with the police departments. 4 of our personnel, 3 to 4 police officers going into harm's way, which is something that even 10 years ago in this valley would have never taken place because we had never trained on it. We had never planned on it.
Were any firefighters or paramedics injured? Were ambulance attendants?
We had no on-duty injuries of any of our emergency response personnel last night.
Did you have any off-duty injuries?
From my fire department, no.
Greg, can we give John Hudenberg
Sure.
a chance to
John.
clarify the notification of the families?
Okay. Thanks, John. Hey, John.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Sheriff. Again, my name's John Fudenberg. I'm the coroner of Clark County, and I'd like to first of all just ask that everybody keeps those involved in this incident in their thoughts and prayers, and as well as the first responders, all government agencies, all of us that have come together and working on this incident. Please keep us in your thoughts and prayers, and know that we're working very hard to make sure that we take care of the families who have loved ones involved in this incident. I'd like to take a moment
and for more on the tragedy that unfolded there in the investigation, let's bring in our first guest tonight, security expert Sam Lafreri. He's former director of security and intelligence operations for Mayor Rudy Giuliani's Office of Emergency Management. Sal, thank you. When you have something of this scope, just with the volume of both injured and the fatalities, and an incident where this person really wasn't on law enforcement's radar, at least that we know of right now, how does the investigation, how do they go about coordinating this so it can be as efficient but also put rhyme to reason?
Well, I think some of the issues that we just heard from the fire chief talking about the responses and the things that were drawing them down, the live gunfire going on. I think one of the issues also comes up is what might have been some of the questions is what they just overwhelmed. That was something that we ran into with 9/11 in New York when we figured that we had a first response capability that was second to none. We had over 60,000 first responder capability, and we were overwhelmed. So you can understand that happening there. With respect to the investigation, you have to start from square one. You start with him. You start looking at his communications. You start looking at his computers. You start looking at messages that he has. And as you start to go through that, you try and get a picture of what was his motive. But that's all a very slow, painstaking process that'll probably wind up taking a couple of weeks.
Obviously, you forgot more than I'll ever know, but I remember after 9/11, there was a completely new top-to-bottom approach for all of first responders, let alone law enforcement, that now it's an anti-terrorism task force that they have to set up. To this end, we kind of had a profile of who we were looking at, whether it was an individual or even an organization that would attach them to this. No one's thinking of some 64-year-old retired accountant, which is this guy, Absolutely. That it seems so daunting. And then in a hotel, after 9/11, we did certain things in this country where it would be much, much harder to get on a plane, let alone to hijack a plane. Secured the cockpit areas. You couldn't go through there without a ton more screening, all the other things, a watch list. But in this case, I would imagine, what are we going to do now? Every hotel room? We're going to have to check bags now going forward and stuff. Did this just have another paradigm shift from what we saw last night in Vegas?
Oh, clearly it did. I think, some of the things that we've always been worried about was that lone gunman, the lone wolf, right? The person who went out and you always had that idea that somewhere along the line they were, mentally deranged or got themselves, changed over into a different religion belief. And that was always the problem. Now you're looking at someone like this, and we don't know, the investigation's way too early, but it could be something as simple as the breakup with his lover that might have caused this to occur. And then you start looking at, he collects all of the guns and he collects all of the ammunition and he puts it together and all of the planning and strategizing that went into this attack. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was something that he really had to think about and plan to get all of that there. And you start thinking about what were the motivations on it. One of the things that we may see, we're always concerned about copycat attacks that take place. And that's something that we're concerned about in the city today. But you look at something like this and you say, is this something where, not that he was motivated by the other attacks that have taken place and for the beliefs that those people have, but was this something where he said, you know what, I really like the idea that I can take a gun and I can follow up and do what was done in Orlando. I can do the same type of attack here and start strategizing it and utilizes that as his attack methodology.
Sal, after a tragedy, unfortunately, it seems that we saw this after the Pulse nightclub attack in Orlando, and now what we see in Vegas, the greatest in terms of casualties. Once again, an ignominious record set. But the cache of weapons he had, the type of weapons he had, the amount of ammunition he had. Is there something that we can do where people like this, if they're going to be about this planning, that they'll be on radars? Again, we have the Second Amendment in this country. I'm not trying to litigate that right now, but I am saying he had semi-automatic weapons. Apparently they find the tools for modifications in there and the volume of ammunition that he had to acquire. Can we realistically, as a society, have some kind of an idea to say, wait a second, this is going to, pardon the pun, trigger an alert here that this guy's doing something and he better have a good reason?
Some of the tripwires that we set up originally, I was involved with the planning for chemical and biological terrorism in the city, our response planning. Yep. And so some of the tripwires that we had put in place, some of the things that we thought you would need to be able to create a chemical attack or a biological attack, we could have monitored the purchase of that. When you get into firearms and you get into the purchasing of ammunition, there was a tremendous amount of rounds that were fired last night, but if you think about it, it was a couple of hundred rounds. And a couple of hundred rounds of bullets is about 4 to 5 boxes. you know, we have this concept that the amount of rounds that were fired is going to be just like a room full of ammunition. And in reality, it doesn't take up all that much room. So at what point do you establish those tripwires? At what point do you start to think about what security at a hotel needs to be? You know, one of the things I had said earlier today was, you know, the paradigm shift here is traditionally security starts at the magnetometer, you go through and then you get into the facility, and that's where you secure the facility. With the exception of a presidential visit or a high-risk escort, where you have someone like a pope or something like that coming in, then that barrier, that perimeter moves back. But on the type of events that we're looking at, especially the type of event today, you don't have the resources or the time or the capability to be able to do that type of a security, you know, sweep for that location. Mandalay Bay is in an incredibly tough situation here. You know, what do you put magnetometers up for, you know, from now on? It's a tough situation,
to say the least. And as you said, this investigation, forget about days, this thing could be weeks here. Sal, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. When we come back, the deadliest mass shooting in American history, once again fueling debates in this country, including about guns. But the White House, they won't even broach that subject today, saying now not the time. So the question is, we asked this after Newtown and many other times, when is it, if ever, the time to have this conversation? Stay with us.
I heard it. Boom, 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 boom.
It literally felt like it just continued for 20 minutes straight.
It could have been me. I was right next to my buddy. That could have been me that got shot. So, you know, very thankful right now.